Okay, and welcome to the IFAN podcast, the Islander Fan Audio Network. Here we are with a little video edition. It's going to be kind of an abbreviated edition. You know, the season's over. The Islanders had their shot and they blew it. It was an otherwise exciting season for obvious reasons, mainly with Matthew Schaefer. But here we are, Ray. Steve Eller's here. Ray Eller's there. And if you want to catch our previous podcasts, which are mainly audio, you go to www.ifanpodcast.com. And we also have some video versions of the interviews we've done, like our most recent one with Neil Smith, who we thank very much for coming on. That's at youtube.com/@IFANpodcast. Ray, starting it off, Islanders collapse down the stretch.
Yeah, I hate to say I'm not surprised, but I'm not surprised. I don't know what it was that was keeping them together. They obviously were overperforming, I think, for their overall depth of talent that they have, particularly on offense. But for whatever reason, I think their true colors finally came out. They were not able to really score continually. They were getting, one or two goals a game there towards the last quarter of the season after the break. And I think it really showed. In some ways, I think it's a good thing because you don't get a false sense of security thinking that maybe you don't have to do too much, but they got to do a lot, man. They got to do a lot up front. They got a lot of problems on defense. They got a lot of problems with contracts. And we're going to dive into all of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think, again, just to kind of reiterate, I'm not too surprised because at the end of the day, this team doesn't have very much depth in goal scoring, and that's really what it came down to at the end. And even Ilya Sorokin couldn't stand on his head enough.
Yeah, funny you should mention him because when you say you don't know how they did it, I would say they got where they got as close as they got because of Ilya Sorokin, Matthew Schaefer, and Bo Horvat, right? We went over Bo Horvat's importance to this team on nights that he scored versus nights that he didn't score, and it's not even close. When he doesn't score, the team basically doesn't win. And Matt Schaefer, the Matt Schaefer quotient, forget it. It was off the charts. But that kid is not in the lineup, even with Bo Horvat. This team probably doesn't sniff it like it did this year.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying because those are their three best players, and and you got to put Barzell up there if you want to talk about their four best players, right?
Yeah, sure.
But those guys do it game in and game out, and they still were doing it game in and game out. All four of them, even down the stretch. So that didn't really equate to the wins that they had prior to that, and the way they were staying in games, the way they were coming back, which they weren't able to do the last quarter of the season. So I think it was a failure overall. I think on the supporting cast of your four, the guys that support your four best players. Even David Riddick down the stretch there kind of faded. He wasn't as reliable as Sorokin was, and Sorokin had to play. When they started getting in trouble and it came close to them losing out of the playoff spot, Watt put him in, and he was playing every game there for a while, which makes sense the way things were going and how desperate things are. So, I think it just shows the lack of depth on this team. And I think everybody knows, and I'm sure Matthew Dosh knows, what needs to get done on his team, man. But, how quickly they can turn things around between the lack of experience they have right now in their prospect pool and the lack of talent they have and the guys that are signed long term, it's going to be interesting. And I'll be glad to dive into that because we were asking Neil Smith that too, and he didn't really seem to have a plan, to have a plan if he was the GM. So that's what I think.
He was basically saying that you just have to kind of be respectful to the guys that have the no trade clauses because they're in the driver's seat, but you have to make a move. You'd rather not buy people out because you're throwing money down the drain and you're not getting anything in return. So it's kind of like trying to do a good deed and get a guy to go somewhere where he doesn't mind going, where he'd either waive the no trade clause or you work your ass off trying to make a deal with a team that is actually one of the teams that this particular guy would go for if he has a limited no trade clause. You got a few guys that still have no trade clauses, and you got a few that are, I think, modified by the time this season ended, where there's 16 teams that they still can't go to. So Darcy's got his work cut out for him there. I do think there's going to be some guys that have to be bought out just to make room. There's going to be some guys that have to be traded. I think there's going to be guys that are free agents that aren't coming back. But again, you're going to have to make room on the roster, number one, but also you're going to have to make room salary cap wise.
Oh, all right. So my response to that is I understand what you're saying, but that's if you're trying to build a team for next year and to compete for next year. And I don't think they have the luxury of being able to have a team that competes next year and the year after and still brings along these guys like they were trying to do. I think if anything, they proved that they can't do that. They don't have what it takes to do that. They don't have enough talent that's established now on the roster, signed, that's going to get into the playoffs next year or the year after. And if you're going to start spending capital, buyouts cost money and a cap hits, free agents cost money. And if you can't find a free agent that's young enough to be around, until around the same age as, let's say, Horvat and Barzal, and has a contract that lasts about as long, what do you do? I mean, like, to me, the only thing that makes sense is blowing this whole fucking thing up, man. I'm telling you, the only thing that makes sense, get rid of everybody except your youngest guys, build around Schaefer, try drafting well, seeing if you can get back somebody. They need a first-line center. Because even if they hold on to Horvat and Barzal, neither one of those guys is a first-line center, an elite first-line center on a perennially winning team. Fuck it, blow it up. That's what I say. And then it's going to be a few years, but at least you got Schaefer and you got some really exciting young guys to build around.
That's probably the most logical thing, but I don't think. Well, look, that could be the plan B. I really don't think that's plan A in Darsh's mind. What I think is he's going to try to find some pieces that fit in with the duration of Horvat and Barzal and Sorokin in their contracts. What do they got? 3-4 years left on their deals, right?
Yeah.
So I think what he's going to try to do, I think he's going to try to plug in some players that he could get now that'll help make this team competitive next year and bring in the kids slowly, like he tried to this year. He had some injuries on defense this year, so we got a chance to look at a few guys. Training camp is going to be another spot to see if any of these guys might be worth sticking. The big thing with this team is that they need help on both sides of the ice. You need that sniper that's going to score goals. You need those secondary guys that are going to plug that 10-goal gap from your top guys to the secondary guys. All right, that's offense. And then you need guys on the back line. You need that 1 second power play quarterback. That's going to be complementary to Schaefer. And then you're going to need a couple of bangers that are going to take the place of the Mayfields and whatever that aren't getting the job done. And I hate to single him out, but I'm only singling him out because he did go from that guy that was out there banging guys and sticking up for his teammates to, half that now. And he's got a long time left on his contract, and he's got, I think, a full no trade clause. So again, guys like that have to be dealt with. Yeah, but like you said, it costs money. It costs money to get guys, on the free agent market. It costs money to buy guys out. I mean, how do you?
Yeah,
How do you pull this off?
It could cost them a lot of money and mobility down the road too. So if they have to buy guys out and pay them off year after year after year, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying they're going to do a Yashin or DiPietro thing, but like, let's say you have to buy out a guy like Mayfield and you have to pay him over the next 5 or 6 years. That ties your hands up a little bit more to when these other guys are young, the younger guys, and Schaefer and those guys are coming along, and now you really want to build around them. Now you got your hands tied. I don't know, man. I just think if anything that would get you around a no trade clause for all of these guys is if they blow it up, because then they're gonna be like, I don't want to be here rebuilding. I got 4 more years left in my career. I'll go somewhere else I might not be thinking about going, just to get the hell out of here, because this isn't the situation I want to be in.
Yeah, and if you blow it up, that's probably your only way to get the chips you need, the players you need, and even at the cost that you can afford. And you got to look at who are the only players that can actually bring you back some value. Barzal, Horvat,
Sorokin.
Pellick, Sorokin. Other than that, you're not touching any of the blue chips yet. There's maybe a couple in there that he would be willing to deal, and you're not touching Schaefer, obviously. So I think on defense, even Romanov, he's not untouchable.
No, definitely.
He's got to prove he's healthy now, but they might wind up packaging guys, bringing back young guys that are maybe got a year or two in the league already, have shown some promise. You don't know. I mean, it's like a million scenarios out there. What I'd like to see is keeping, this main semblance of this team together. I'd like to see Horvat stay. You'd obviously like to see Barzal stay. You'd obviously like to see Sorokin stay. To me, after those guys and Schaefer, everybody else should be, either allowed to walk, packaged, something.
Yeah, I mean,
you got to make the team better. You got to change the face.
I don't know how. See, I don't know how. So, like we said in the beginning, right? I said they showed their true colors by not being able to make the playoffs this year with the established guys that they got. Just wasn't enough. I don't know how the hell they do it next year.
Well, they could do it if they had help. You know what I mean?
Then again, like we said, you're bargaining.
The support group was not up to snuff. Didn't get them to where they had to go. And it's right there in black and white, too. I mean, if you like us and you watched the team all year, you saw it. For the people who don't want to see it, who are blind because they like a guy or they have his jersey or they talked him up so much, they're afraid to say that they're wrong about him now. There's a lot of that crap going on. So there's a lot of people who don't want to admit what they see. And for those people, just look at the stats. And we've talked about it us till we're blue in the face. We brought it up with Neil on the interview, and he was totally in agreement. I mean, he sees it too. You can't go with Horvat, Schaefer, Heineman and Barzal as your top goal scorers, where one of your top 4 scorers is your top defenseman.
Top 2 in everything, right? He was your second best goal scorer, your second best assist guy, and your second best points getter.
I mean, it's great. I hope he does it again next year.
Yeah,
but you need people that you can't go from 30 and your next highest goal scorer is 12 goals behind him.
Yeah.
No, 18 goals behind him.
You had 32 from Horvat, and then the next step down was 22 from Schaefer, and 22 from Heineman, and 19 from Barzal. Okay, right. So, and then after that, what do you got? Maybe 8? I think 18. I think you had
like 3 or 4 other guys with more than 10 goals.
Yeah,
and the rest of the team was below 10 goals.
But you still don't even have a top 6, right? And we've been saying that. You got 2 guys who are legitimate top 6 if you go by league standards, and that's Barzal and Horvat, and neither one of them is an elite anything. unless maybe you look at Barzell and say he's an elite playmaker, and if he had a real sniper, a guy who could score 30 to 40 goals, who could score from anywhere on his line, maybe he would be, that considered a real top three guy. But I mean, even Horvat on a good team, he's probably your second line center, even scoring 30 goals. Because you need multiple guys to score 30 goals. You can't have one freaking 30 goal scorer and expect to even make the playoffs. So they've got 2 out of 6. They got a four-man hold to fill. Now, could Heineman improve? Heineman went from scoring, I think, 13 goals the year before to scoring 22. Right? Is he an emerging guy? Maybe, but he's never been projected to be a top 6 guy. You know, Holmstrom has been kind of stuck at 17, 18 goals for the last couple of years. Again, not bad. These are like if those two guys are on your third line,
Right.
then that means you've got real production on your top 6, and now you got a good top 9. You know what I mean? But there's just so many holes to fill. That's what I'm saying. It's just they're not like 1 or 2 guys away from being a playoff team. I don't care what happened this year because it just showed you that they're not. And there's just so many holes to fill. And then we talk about defense is a whole other thing. And it's like how much money do you spend now, and how many years into the future do you put an older guy on a contract because he's going to get old, he's going to probably production's going to dip in the next couple of years while you're trying to bring these guys up and build something. I just don't think they have enough to say what they were trying to do this year. I think they should just say, you know what, screw it. But they're not going to. I agree with you. They're not going to because they wouldn't have signed Pajot. They wouldn't have signed Shen, right? Um, so I don't know, man. I think we got another year of this year next year. You know what I mean? Unfortunately. Hopefully, though, maybe, they can get lucky. Hopefully, the younger guys take steps up, right? So I don't know how much more you could expect a guy like Chafin to give you than he gave you. Hopefully, he at least doesn't go backwards and have some kind of sophomore slump. Hopefully, you see a guy like Richie be more productive. Hopefully, you see maybe an Iserman step up or an Eklund step up, or maybe even Aitcheson maybe later on in the year next year, and you start seeing some of these young guys move the team in more of a younger direction. But you're not going to see too many goals, not going to see too many friggin' biscuits in the back of the net, man. It's just going to be another frustrating year. They're not going to be able to score in the friggin' power play, and they're just going to be scoring 2-3 goals a game.
Yeah, I agree. But like you said, I don't think they're going to blow it up unless there's just no moves to be made. And I don't think they're going to. That's a really, really last resort. I think they'll do everything they can before they do that. But again, the other thing was Patrick Waugh relieved of his duties with 4 games left. That was pretty surprising to a lot of people because I think finally the team was better than it was last year. It scored more points than it had last year. I mean, it came close. They took that little dump down the end, and we didn't get over the finish line. But I think this was the first year where I didn't see a hell of a lot of people compared to last season putting it in Waugh's lap. They were really going after the people on the ice, and more people were going after Darsh than Waugh. But I agree with Neil. When we were talking to him about it, and he said that it surprised me until DeBoer was signed in the same news cycle.
Yeah.
Then I knew. So it must have been in the back of his mind to make that kind of change. And when he found out that a guy like DeBoer was available and was going to be probably worth a little bit more in the offseason with a ton of teams chasing him.
Yeah.
I think that's what made it happen with 4 games left. But that being said, he wasn't replaced by some no-name guy.
Steve Sterling.
Yeah, like a Steve Sterling and somebody like that. You know what I mean? Or a Capuano. No disrespect to him, but I mean, they didn't just reach down somewhere and make some guy, the coach, and say, let's see what happens. They went out and got a guy that's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
He's got a great pedigree. So I think we'll be okay with that coach. They're bringing up Rocky Thompson from Bridgeport to be his one of his right-hand men. But again,
coaching, great. The coaching, we saw a couple of coaches over the years, 2, 3, 4 maybe, and a power play that's still at the bottom of the league. It's not the coaches if it's happening under multiple coaches,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I totally agree with you, and I agree with Neil when he was on with us, and that just speaks completely to Bohr. Well, for him to be out there, Darsh must have had, like you said, in the back of his mind, probably figured, look, why ain't his guy? He inherited him. He gave him a shot. Probably didn't have a lot of faith in him for whatever reason moving forward. And DeBoer was available, and he made the move. He said, "Screw it. What do we got to lose? We're nose diving anyway. It probably won't make it unless this guy comes and pulls off a miracle, and we get some help at the same time." So, look, you can't.
And I thought
argue.
the time was. I thought. Sorry to interrupt you, but I thought when the move was made, the timing. If you're going to do it, and that guy is out there and he's ready to come on board, to do it when they finally had 4 days off between games, which they hadn't had in God knows how many months. They've been playing like a pretty, every other night, back to back, 2 nights off tops, for since definitely before the new year. So to have 4 days off where they could, bounce back from the shock of it all, have a little powwow, get on the ice, and get a little game plan for the last 4 games to see if they can scooch over the line there. I thought the timing of it was good too. Like, so if you're going to do it in that way, doing it at that point with 4 games, 4 days in between games was a good spot to do it.
Yeah, I think that had something to do with it, at least that specific day. But he probably had that in the back of his mind. Something must have happened where it was the tipping point for Darsh to say, I'm pulling the cord on this guy, and hopefully let's make sure we got Pete DeBoer locked up, and then I'm gonna, I'm gonna get rid of him." So, look, you can't argue with a guy like Pete DeBoer and his resume coming in and trying to help the team, particularly long term, particularly if you're building something with some young talent. The guy's he's got an impressive resume of being able to get teams and have them play at a very high level. That said, though, again, like you said, it's not the coaching, and I don't even know if it's the system. It's just there just hasn't been enough talent. There's no depth again. And the scoring, when you're consistently at the bottom of the league in overall scoring, and your power play is horrible every year, you just don't have the horses, man. So again, getting back to our original conversation, if you try to invest for the midterm here, the short term, to try to keep the team afloat and hovering around the playoffs while you're bringing up guys and bringing them in the younger talent, you could really put yourself in a corner financially and contract wise in a couple of years, and they're in bad enough shape as it is with some of these contracts.
If you just look at the people that you can afford to let go, and again, I'm not saying we should let anyone go, but you can afford to let people go. You're going to have openings to bring in some young guys, see if they fit. And you're also going to, it's going to help you salary wise. You're going to be able to maybe go out and get some guys, bring them in. What I see is, unless it's really a team friendly deal, I don't see Anders Lee coming back. I think the Islanders need the space, roster wise and salary wise. I mean, this guy is making $6-7 million a year. I think, and I don't think he's going to have a problem. I mean, not that I know anything, but going to Minnesota or Colorado or somewhere closer to home that, that's this playoff contender every year to finish up his career. I don't think he'd and get more money too. So I just think the odds are that Anders is not coming back. I think unless it's a real need to plug a couple of spots in on the back line cheaply, I don't see Susie or even Tony D coming back. And again, Honestly, I was probably one of the few guys that didn't have a problem with Susie for the most part. Not saying he didn't make any mistake, but people were beating the shit out of this guy. And I'm like, he's been here a few months. He did some good things. He's a little slow. He's not much.
He was
He's a sixth defenseman.
Yeah, he was a stop.
So anyway, what I'm saying is, a guy like Pony Susie, I think they'll let them walk. They'll save a few $1 million. They'll bring in maybe a younger guy, or maybe another guy like that costs half as much. I mean, I just see a lot of that kind of stuff happening. You know what I mean? I mean, who knows if Gatcomb's gonna make it through? Who knows if some of these other even restricted free agents that we have are even going to get signed? They're going to have to play games not just with roster spots, but with money, and not just with money, but with roster spots, because they have to import people here. They can't just rebuild through the draft. You're not going to get a Schaefer every time you draft someone, right? But they have some good guys in the hopper now. But like you said, it's going to take a couple of years for most of them to get up to the big club. But you're not gonna want to live at the bottom of the freaking league either. In the meantime, so you have a Horvat, you have a Barzell, you have Sorokin, a Vezina candidate. You're gonna want to do some winning. You want to get into the playoffs. You want to give these other guys experience at the same time, whether you're a cup contender or not. That's for another day. Let's get there. So I think they're going to try to make some moves. I think they're going to let some people go. I think they're going to bite the bullet on a few people too. That may have to buy some people out, but they're going to make room. And then I think they're going to package some people, or maybe even some prospects, and maybe a draft pick, which will piss people off for next year. You get rid of a draft pick, but I think they're going to try to get some people now that can plug those holes that we've been talking about, because those holes have been there forever.
Yeah, I don't know how many moves they really got. I don't know how many friggin' cards he's got up his sleeve to make moves, though, because there aren't a lot of guys that you can buy out and have it make sense financially. There aren't a lot of guys that allow you to trade them again, unless like I said, unless they have a situation here where people don't want to be here anymore.
Well, you got buyout candidates are Duclair, Mayfield. I think there's one other guy. Who's the other guy?
Duclair, Mayfield. Engvall.
Oh, Engvall. He's you know what I keep hearing? No, they're not going to get rid of Engvall. They're just going to bury him in the minors in case they ever need him. I'm like, why? You're going to pay this guy $3-4 million a year to play in Hamilton? What the hell's wrong with you people? I don't
Especially when you got guys ahead of him, when you got younger guys that you could be bringing up. Right. But he's the other guy. And then remember, you still got another year of Palmieri, who probably league standard wise is a top 6 guy, right? But he's older and he's been hurt. He's coming off a bad injury.
Right.
Again, but you're not going to get rid of him. He's another guy, no trade. He's got one more year. He's not going to go anywhere. So you don't have a lot of pieces to move around, man.
And he's kind of deserves to get that look, though, because he's been one of your better, more productive guys for the past 3-4 seasons.
Yeah.
So coming back from an injury is one thing. They're obviously going to do their medical investigations on him and make sure he's good to go when he comes back. Camp will tell. We'll see. He's only got 1 year left, so I would assume that he's coming back and he'll be on this club.
That's what I'm going to tell you, man. I'm telling you. I can't see them making too many moves. I think it's going to be very similar. They're going to make some moves because they can't just stand pat, but they're not going to make any big major moves. I think you're going to see a very similar approach to this team next year as you did this past season, and you'll probably have similar results where they'll finish in the middle of the pack. But getting back real quick to Anders Lee. When they didn't talk about signing him, and then went out and got Shen, right? They signed Pajot, didn't address Anders Lee at all, and they went out and got Shen. I said Anders Lee's not going to be here. He's not in their plans. I can't see him coming back, especially now you got Shen for 2 more years. Who's and I don't even know he wasn't even as productive as Lee, but he kind of brings the same type of thing to the table, as well as another expensive contract, as well as another no trade clause. So I was thinking maybe he's considering retiring, and nobody's really talked about that, but it's a possibility that they might be dangling like a Matt Martin type of deal in front of him and saying, look, you're free to do what you want to do. We don't think you're going to factor into next season or the next 2 seasons for us. But, we love you. You're, the captain for 9 years and you're an all-time Islander. And we'd love to have you in the organization if you decide to hang up the skates.
Yeah, no, that's an entirely feasible possibility. I mean, it could be. My gut feeling is that he still wants to play. I mean, he had his, 10-goal drop off, I think, last year. But I think he still feels like he can play. And I think he's going to want to play. And you know what? If you feel like he can still play and maybe have a better year next year with a better club, and you can still get a chance to make a few million more, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Brock Nelson did it, right?
Right. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's looking at Brock and saying, I could do that. And hey, Brock, maybe you need me over there. Talk to them.
Yeah.
You never know.
I don't know.
I mean, and I wouldn't blame him. And I wouldn't blame him because
not at all.
He probably sees that he's not factoring in either.
Yeah.
And I know he gets it, and he's not going to take any offense to it. It's business. But
he probably would.
I think we have to get, if he comes back, great. But I'm saying I think we have to get used to the idea that Anders Lee is most likely not coming back.
I would be very surprised if he did, based on all these other moves that they made. I'd be very surprised if he came back.
Yeah, I would think Horvat would get to see after that, and you'd see Barzell hang on to 1A and Shen get the other one.
Who's wearing the other? Oh yeah, who's wearing the other A this year? It was Horvat and Polak for wearing the A's this year.
Yeah.
Right, so
yes. On that note, I mean, I don't know how much more we could say on that subject, being that, yeah, we need help. Front line, back line, power play. The power kill was okay. The penalty kill was okay. So, you definitely need guys to come in, and they're going to have to really do their homework. And I'm sure they're doing it now, and I'm sure they have been doing it, their evaluation and all that. They've got to bring in 2 defensemen and 2 forwards and I mean impact players, people who are going to make a difference.
I would.
So who are they? But who are they then? That's what I'm saying. Let's go out and get. Well, you got the draft picks coming. I don't see anybody. We're picking 13th. We saw the lottery, and I don't think there's anybody within that realm that's gonna
be ready.
Gonna be ready to play. So whoever they draft, whether it's a defenseman or a forward or whatever out there, we've seen the list. I don't see anybody who's going to be drafted in that spot, 13, or anyone that's, 10, 11, 12, 13, all the way beyond 13, who's going to be NHL ready. So that person is not going to make an impact on this team, at least not right away. And then you got the free agency.
Well, look, before we get into that, I just let's just finish this up. And I'll just say, I would think that, you probably see D'Angelo and Soucy not get signed. And out of those 2 slots, Romanov slides into one of them, comes back. And then the other one, they're probably going to look to bring up either a guy like Isaiah George or Marshall Warren, or maybe even Aitcheson. People keep saying that, but probably not until either at the end of next season or the following season. But I think that's what they would probably think to do, and then maybe see if they can bring somebody else in. But before we get into free agency, I was just going to say the draft, I think, is really the next phase of where we would see which way these guys might be going. Because you got to remember, we don't have a 2nd round pick and we don't have a 3rd round pick. So Darsh might be trying to do some gymnastics there to try to get one of those picks back. Yeah, move down, and then you don't know who gets involved in a trade like that, right? Because now you got a higher pick and maybe an established veteran, particularly on the defensive side, which we have. Maybe something happens there, and maybe and maybe not. But I'm thinking if we're gonna get an idea, any indication, the next phase would be at the draft, and if he makes any moves, draft time.
That would not surprise me. I don't have the names in front of me, but I've been reading and hearing all around. Like they pop up all the time. All these different these trade rumors, but who knows? Because people are out there and they're wonks, man. They see what other teams need. They see what we have. But the one thing that I keep seeing is a deal with Pellick, because out of Pellick and Pullock's injured now, and he's a question mark, even for us, let alone another team who would want to take him, or who would think that they would like to have him on the team. Nobody's sure of him right now with that shoulder. So Pellick's the next guy that he's got value, and you may with all our defensive prospects and a couple of really good free agents out there that you might be able to grab. Dealing Pellick for a couple of forwards, in some kind of deal, and maybe we'd have to throw in a couple of young chips or whatever that we know aren't going to come up here. I think going to San Jose, they keep saying San Jose is chock full of young forwards, and some are ready to get into the NHL. They kind of like us with our centers. We don't need centers. We need wingers, right? Well, they need defense, and they need a shutdown guy like Pellick. So if the Islanders are confident in Romanov being healthy coming back, confident in George and Warren, and you got Schaefer, and then they pick up a couple of guys, or even one in a free
Well, you're
agent
running out of
market.
spots because you still got Mayfield, and you got to have somebody probably to come in.
They're out. They're out.
Yeah,
That's when the buyouts come, bro. That's when the buyouts come.
I would love to see it happen, Steve. I don't see how realistic it is.
Well, I'm just saying that's what's floating around out there. And I could see it happening because I could see them saying, all right, we've got a lot of prospects. We've got a lot of guys out there that we can bring up. Certain guys ready. We can make a deal for this guy. We can afford to trade this guy and bring back the offensive help we need. I think the deal would get done. Let's just say it wouldn't surprise me.
Right. It would be nice to see. I think they have to get rid of one of those two guys, and like you said, Pullock's electing to have surgery, so he's pretty much, solidified his spot on the roster for next year. So yeah, it would be good to. It would. Be, I think they need to move some guys around, get some new blood in here, even if it's just some minor moves like that. Which could down the line bring you back some really good talent. I would like to see that. I think it's going to be harder to do anything with the forwards within the next year or two.
Yeah, but one other thing I'm going to say is about Aitcheson. There's people out there who live up in Canada and they're Islander fans, and they're chiming in on the all the different social media and everything, but they keep saying he's not ready, he won't be ready, and blah, 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 blah. And he's playing against boys, not men. And when he plays against men, okay, whatever. All I'm saying is I would not sell this kid so short just yet. I'm dying to see him in camp when he's going to be playing against a lot of prospects who've had a cup of coffee up here and, played in the league, and they've got some experience even playing in the minors for a few years. He was impressive last year, and people forget that. All right. He had to go back to junior, and he did. And he didn't just go back to junior. He went mental. Physically, offensively, he was setting records. He was setting team records. He was setting league records. They're in the playoffs now. He pretty much put them on his shoulder. 2 games in a row, he scored the tying goal in the last minute of the game.
Yeah, he's having a
And
great
he's
play.
coming up big in big spots. He's laying guys out. And you know what? He's not afraid to drop him if anyone wants to take exception to a hit. So I think we're going to see him. We already saw him step up his game, his playoffs, right? I think he's still got it in him to step it up and make it to the NHL. I'm not saying that I expect him to be on the opening night roster, but I'm saying the odds are pretty good that he could fool some people that don't think he's ready, and he could make it very, very difficult for Darsh to send him to Hamilton for the year. They may turn around and say, you know what, let's give him 9 games. Kind of like what they did with Schaefer, and go, shit, we can't put this guy down now. We need him.
Well,
and he showed he could play.
If Pulock doesn't start the season, right? I don't know what his timetable is with the surgery, but if he doesn't start the season, that's a good possibility if the kid has a good camp. And I guess it goes for any of the young guys that they have down there, because unless they go out and make a trade for and bring in a stud defenseman, established guy, that'll probably happen for 1, maybe even 2 of these guys, depending on who they hold on to and who they get rid of. So I
and you got Eklund, and you got Eklund when we talk about offensive guys. He didn't look out of place these last couple of games he played of the season, and he decided not to play for Team Sweden. Now he was picked. Everybody thought he was going, and now he's not going. He wants to totally get in shape and get ready for the NHL or the AHL. He said, wherever I wind up, it's going to be NHL or the AHL. I want to be ready to play for them, and I don't want to put myself out there to ruin it in any other way, shape, or form. So this kid's going to be coming in ready to go. He's another guy that we got to keep an eye on.
Yeah, he's a bit of a surprise how they're talking about how ready he might be. And he actually came up and played at the end of the season, again, as an 18-year-old. But again, you also got Cole Eiserman, who I think is 20 and might even be 21 by the time camp starts or by the time the season starts. And he's, he's had 3 years in the NCAA.
Danny Nelson's making a name.
Danny Nelson made the national team for the Worlds. So yeah, so he's another guy that's down there. But I think from your offensive guys, you've got Eiserman coming, and you've got Eklund. Based on what you saw last year, he could be there as well. And there was another guy I can't remember that they brought up. But they brought all those guys up. They brought up George. They brought up Eklund. And they brought up another guy too, another forward. I forget his name. I think he's a center, smaller guy. I didn't see much from him, but again, he's one of their top prospects. I can't remember his freaking name again, but
either way, that if you don't remember his name and much about him, that's probably a reason for that. Not I hadn't heard. Again, no disrespect. These guys are young. They're not going to all blow you away the first couple of games. But
he did enough to.
One thing that's the other thing too. We need, Ray, is size. We need some size, especially on that back line. You know what I mean? There isn't any one of these teams that are in the playoffs right now. And when you find out the two teams in the finals, you look at their defense every year. The two teams in the finals have monsters on defense. And we need a couple of monsters on defense, because the guys we have back there that was supposed to get it done with their size and stuff, they're just not doing it. They're either a little too old and a little too slow, or they just don't have that edge that you need if you're a big guy. You know what I mean?
And that leads that leads us then to who's available in the draft, right? We're picking 13. This is a very defensive heavy draft this year,
right?
And a lot of right-handed defensemen as well. And that's what we kind of lack that. All our top defense prospects are left-handed shots, and there's a bunch of guys who are going to go way before we pick, because it's very rich in defensemen this year for whatever reason, but that shoot from the right side. So I got a list of guys. I don't know who shoots what, but do the Islanders look to say who's the best right-handed shooting defenseman?
No.
Or do they go and say who's the best guy?
Because they need that now, and I don't think any of those guys are going to be ready now. And as a matter of fact, they're talking about this kid, Oscar Hemming, who's a left wing out of Boston College. Big kid, size, speed, skill, you know, just kind of like a raw kid, potential. So, we're looking for size, and we know we drafted some guys recently that are big. So I think they're going to be looking at some forwards. But like you said, and like we said last year, you're going to go with the best guy in the draft. And at 13, you have to look at the best guy out of whoever's left. So is this kid Hemming, going to be the best guy available? I mean, there may be a couple of guys who were supposed to get picked first, like Tynan Lawrence is another name being thrown around that might be available, and they may decide to go with that kid. But you never know. I think what they're going to, or I hope, let's just say, if you're going to go and try to plug the holes, I think as far as defense goes, in a year where people are saying there aren't that many great unrestricted free agents out there, there are a few, and they're defensemen. And I wrote a few down here. Number one, if you want to just go by size alone, Jamie Alexiak over there in Seattle, he's a monster. He's 6'7". He's not a goon. He's a decent he's a decent defenseman, but he's a monster. Can we please get a monster? That would be nice. Logan Stanley, another guy. All right. This guy, he's had 9 majors this year. That's a guy who fights, but who doesn't fight all the time. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of other guys in there. I mean, I wouldn't go with Trouba. He's on his way out, on his way down. And you know what? You got a big guy, John Carlson, 36 years old. You want to plug a gap and put a guy that's still available and with something left in the tank at 36 years old that you can put on your power play. The guy had, I think, 14 or 15 goals last year. Could we use him on the power play instead of whoever the hell we were using? Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of guys out there, man. Connor Murphy, Edmonton, 6'4". A lot of dudes out there. Jeremy Lawson with Vegas. You ever see this guy? I think I saw 3 of his fights, and he never even had to throw a punch. He's big, he's strong. He grabs a guy like this, and you know how you go to stretch someone out and before you blast them? He winds up stretching the guy out, and his strength just buckles the guy to the ground. I'm like, can we get a guy like that? That would be nice, And I think each time he was sticking up for a teammate. So those are the kind of guys you need back there, and they're out there. There's a handful of them.
You got to look
But
at
like
the
I was
age.
saying before, we need guys also that can put the puck in the net and help out on the power play.
Well, look, out of those guys. So before you get moving into the forwards, let's talk about those guys. Like, what are the ages on those guys? All right. I mean, Carlson. It would be nice to have a Carlson guy, but he's 36 years old. You're going to sign this guy to a 3 or 4 year contract, and he's going to command top friggin' dollar. It'd be nice to have.
I don't know if guys like that age who don't score as much as they used to are going to get the money that you think they're going to get.
He's one of those guys. He's got a pedigree. He's a perennial all-star. He's got a ring, and he would go to a contending team that'd be willing to pay a little bit more to get them over the edge. So a team that needs that's right there. Maybe even a team like, Colorado's got good defense, but maybe like a team like Anaheim, who's got a very young team and doesn't have a lot of,
He's on Anaheim now.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, Washington traded him to Anaheim at the deadline.
Oh, at the deadline. All right, so that's what I'm saying. So he just might wind up signing with that because that's a good spot for him, a good fit for him.
Maybe. You know what I mean? Well, maybe he just wants to play with Schaefer like everybody else.
But again, you're going to get stuck with this guy till he's 40 and have to pay him. And then when you got younger guys coming up, you know what I mean? But the other guys, I know Logan Stanley's like 30, right?
29, 30. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, guys like that, they'll be around for a while. But, anything older than that, I don't know, man. I don't know if it makes sense.
Well, I'll tell you what, Chychrun is Jacob Chychrun is a free agent this year. Another big kid, 6'2", 215. He scored 26 goals last year, and he's 28 years old. All right? You'll pay top dollar for him.
Yeah.
But again, a guy like that's worth it. I mean, you don't know if he's going to score 26 goals every year, but These are the guys you got to look at. These are the guys you got to make a play for, And if you could plug them in as a free agent, that gives you so much more room to deal or to, make those buyouts or package or, like Neil was talking about. Hey, look, let's just make a deal with someone for a bag of pucks and a late draft pick, late round draft pick or something like that. That
just to clear the books,
just to clear the field and get the dead wood out of here. So I do think that there's a chance of getting one or two of these defensemen that you do need as free agent. Because again, I don't care if a guy is in his 30s. If he's in his late 30s, you're talking a 3-year deal, 3-year deal, mid 30s. Early 30s, maybe you're going to have to go 4 years, but Darsh doesn't really go 4 years, so you're not going to have to worry about that. I'm talking guys that are going to produce because they still have something left in the tank for that gap, those gap years that you're talking about until those other guys who are waiting for can come through. You're going to have to do it through free agency. And when you get these guys through free agency, it's going to free up some other guys that you can deal for the offensive help you need.
I mean, again, as long as they don't overpay, they're not in a cap crunch situation, and the guys that they need to get rid of, they've already gotten rid of, right? Like if you're gonna buy guys out, buy them out before you sign these guys, and then that way you've got the space and the room to move and you know what you're getting. Otherwise, you could get caught out there. What if you can't buy out Mayfield? I don't know. What if they can't do it? What if they can't come to a deal? What if they can't trade him somewhere? What if they're looking on they're looking to trade a guy like Pellick, but they already bring in, so now they're overstocked with defensemen. I don't think it's a bad idea. Like I said, I think they need to kind of break up the band a little bit back there. I just don't want to see them kind of counting on things that might not necessarily happen, and then they get screwed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I don't think they're actually going to be. I don't see them approaching it in that kind of manner where they would be counting on something happening and it doesn't, and you're stuck. I think. Well, let's face it. Let's say they do buy out Mayfield. Or let's say they and Duclair and Engvall, all three of them, which odds are it's not going to happen. Or they're able to make some deals for draft picks and also ran type players, stopgap type players, minor leaguers even. And now you clear the board with those guys. I don't think they sit there and go, okay, we didn't get these free agents, so now it wasn't worth getting rid of those guys. I think whoever you plug in to take their place, you're not going to do any worse, and you're more than likely going to make an improvement.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
That's a good point.
And again, it's only because of what we're seeing out there. And when I'm talking about production now, they're all great guys, but production-wise, if we're going to move forward, you got to clear the deck. And there's only really a handful of guys that are really worth hanging on to right here.
Yeah, I agree.
So, it's going to be interesting to see, though. I can't wait. I really can't wait. I don't have my hopes up. I'm not holding my breath or anything like that. I know how I hope they approach the whole thing like we're talking about now. I want to see them take a little risk. I want to see some new faces, though, and some new blood in there this year. I don't even care if they're from, either from Bridgeport or juniors. If they're exciting kids and they looking like they want to play, I want to see them there on the ice, man. Let's go.
I'm tired of seeing the same guys over and over again that can't score. I really am. It was this year was really good to see. To watch, it was fun to watch, mainly because of Schaefer, but also because they were winning some games and they were hanging in there and they were coming back and they were winning a lot of overtime games. But you can't expect that type of performance from them this coming year.
Like he was saying early on too, when they made that little when they had that tail end of the year where they kind of just fell off the planet, the guys that were pretty much holding it together and floating the boat for them all year long really weren't having a great stretch either. Like Horvat wasn't scoring as much, wasn't playing terribly, but he wasn't finding the net as often as he was, let's say, in those stretch of games leading up to that stretch run. Even Schaefer, you know what I mean? And Sorokin, he was a little bit worn down now because Watt didn't trust Riddick anymore. As good as Riddick was most of the year, which was, wow, geez, we're playing with house money. Nobody, I don't think, really expected that. He was real good.
Yeah.
But then he kind of came down to earth, and Watt didn't trust him anymore, or with as much playing time. And then I think Sorokin, still playing very, very well, was kind of getting a little worn. And the guys in front of him, again, just not a real good defense. So I wouldn't even blame him. I would just say that, a couple of goals that he'd like to have back, but it's, if you don't see the goals,
on his head.
if you don't see them coming, you're not going to be able to stop them. And I think a lot of those guys, they just freaking screen him half the time, or they let guys get behind him, and he just got no chance on some of them. But again, those are the guys. Those are the three main guys that were the reason why they were taking the rest of this team along. And when they kind of slowed down a little bit, nobody stepped up. Barzell was still Barzell all year long. He had a really good year. But, with those three guys were really the main dudes, front, back, and goal. So
it's a depth thing again.
You got to do better than that. He's got to go out and get more people, man. We got to fill this roster with a lot of people.
Like I said, they got a lot of big shoes to fill, big holes to fill in really important spots. And, there's going to be hope that other guys are going to develop that they already have, that are going to get better, and other guys that are going to come up through, and then they're going to have to wait for that. And then there's other guys that there's other things where maybe they can turn around and say, okay, we can make a trade or get a free agent. I just can't see too many big moves being made as much as we'd like to see it.
Yeah. Well, like we always do, we'll bet. I definitely owe you a beer because I said they were going to go 7-3, I think, with those last 10 games, and I think it was 3-7. So I owe you a beer for once.
I said they were going to go 4-5 or something like that. Or it was 9 games.
Well, you came closer than I did. I thought for sure they were going to pull out a couple of games they shouldn't have won, but it was like the opposite. They lost games they should have won, and it was real rough. So I definitely owe you a beer. If you want to go double for nothing to see what they do over the summer, I'm going to be optimistic, and I'm going to say they're going to sign a couple of guys, and I think they're going to make one big trade.
So they're going to sign 2 top free agents and make one major
I don't know if they'll
trade?
be top, but I think they'll be significant.
Two significant free agents
Fine.
and one major trade.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think they'd make that many moves. So I would say they were probably either going to get somebody either through a trade or through a free agent signing, and maybe have a minor free agent thing like they did with Drew N or something like that. That's what I think. So you got 3 moves and I got 1.5 moves. Let's see what happens.
Okay. And a blockbuster bet. We'll add a beer. Do you think Aitcheson makes the club out of camp or not?
No. I think he's got a chance to get called up if he's got a good year, but they haven't even seen him in like against anybody but 18-year-olds.
I just have a feeling about him. I think in camp he's going to make it very hard for them to put him in. I think he's going to show that he belongs.
All right,
but I could be wrong, and that's okay.
Mean, I didn't think Schaefer was going to make it out of there, but I don't think you did either. So
nobody did. That's what I'm saying, and I think this guy's going to be impactful. He's going to be different than Schaefer. It's going to be a different way, but I think he's going to be impactful on a very, very significant level where we're going to be glad he's our guy. So I'm hoping for another year where we're watching him and Schaefer, and it'll be great. So I'm going to say he makes the team.
All right. So outside of the fact that I would owe you 2 beers, I would like to see it as well, but I got to be realistic here. So all right. So we'll see what happens.
All right, sounds good. All right, that'll wrap it up. And I guess we'll, in about a month, while the playoffs are getting towards the Cup Finals, we'll come back and we'll have a little chat and see what's going on between now and then. And if there's any rumors in the rumor mill, and if there's anything that we need to talk about. Ray, another good time hanging with you, talking a little Islanders hockey. Thanks to Neil Smith for coming on for the interview portion. He's always a blast and just a world of information and a lot of wisdom from that guy.
Yeah. Listen, but about a month from now, we're going to be at the draft, right? The draft's going to be, I think, in about 5 weeks. So we could be talking about who they're drafting, who they might draft, or who they already did draft, depending on how quickly we can get our stuff together. So,
all right,
should be interesting
sounds
the next
good,
couple
man.
of weeks. All right.
All right, sounds good. Take care, everybody. God bless.